Welcome back into the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060, the KDUS AM 1060 app, and the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube channel. And I will tell you, today is an interesting day to be over on the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube channel. Because we're in the home studio, I have a different setup for the live stream. So there's a microphone that's just going to the live stream, and then there's the microphone that you're hearing me on the radio station. So during the break, I'm talking to the live chat during the breaks, which I'm not normally able to do when we are in the studio. So a very different look over on the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube channel live stream today. So if you're interested in that or you have some time, head on over there, subscribe over there, and you have a chance to catch the show live and get the video version, and you get some extras, right, on a day like today. Losses like last night have become the norm for the Phoenix Suns. I wrote down a list. I have that list in front of me of bad losses for the Phoenix Suns just this season. This isn't all of them. It's not a comprehensive list. This is just some of the ones that I could immediately remember off the top of my head. The two losses in Portland, the easiest to write down. The loss in Atlanta, the loss in Charlotte, the loss at home to the shorthanded Grizzlies, the loss to the Pistons at home, a loss in New Orleans to the Pelicans, and then a home loss to the Brooklyn Nets. That's just some of the losses. Let's do some quick math. 2 against Portland. Atlanta is 3. Charlotte is 4. Memphis is 5. Detroit is 6. New Orleans is 7. Brooklyn is 8. I found 8 losses that truthfully are inexcusable. How different would it be if the Phoenix Suns won half of those games? Let's do a fun little thought exercise, everybody. Let's give the Phoenix Suns 4 more wins. So instead of being 25-24, if we had them split those 8 games that I just put together, they would be 29-20. Do you know where 29-20 would have them? Do you know where that would put them right now? They would be the 6th seed in the Western Conference. They would be comfortably the 6th seed. They'd be right on the heels of the Lakers for the 5 seed. They'd be 1 game back in the loss column of the Denver Nuggets for the 4 seed. That's if they split those 8 games that I just put on the table for you all. If you just split these last 2 against Portland, if you beat Memphis at home when they're shorthanded, missing their top 2 rebounders in that game, if you don't lose to Detroit at home, if you don't lose to Brooklyn at home, let's not lose to Charlotte, the 4th worst team in the NBA. I don't care that it was the second night of a back-to-back. You don't lose that game. You don't lose to the Brooklyn Nets, who are 17 games below 500. Let's not lose to those teams. I know Memphis is the 2 seed, but on the night that you played them, that was not the 2-seeded Memphis Grizzlies. That was more like the 12th-seeded Memphis Grizzlies, or 12th-ranked Memphis Grizzlies. That was the team that you played. And here is where it all comes back for the Phoenix Suns. They are 12-16 against teams that are 500 and above, and they are only 13-8 against teams that are below 500. You want to know what the upper echelon teams in the Western Conference are doing against teams below 500? How about the Thunder, 18-1. The Grizzlies, 20-3. The Rockets, 13-4. The Nuggets, 16-5. The Clippers, 16-4. The Lakers, 15-4. Do you sense a theme here? If you want to be a good team, you got to beat the teams below 500. And all those losses that I just mentioned, Portland, 2 losses against Portland, a team that was below 500. A loss to the Brooklyn Nets, a team that's below 500. The Detroit Pistons, right now, just at 500. You lost to Atlanta, who's below 500. Brooklyn, who's below 500. Charlotte, who's below 500. All of these teams that you lost to that are on this list, and that's just 8 games that I picked. 8 losses of the 24. A third of your losses are games that you should not have lost. Games that you gave away. And that doesn't even include games like Minnesota last week, where you had a lead going into the second half and you blew that lead. This is the norm for the Phoenix Suns this year. This is what their resume is. When we look back at this season, this is the thing that I want us to focus on. That they didn't take care of business against teams that are below 500. They didn't win the winnable. They lost 2 to Portland. We gave the game yesterday a 10 with an exclamation point importance for our brand new handy dandy how important is this game for the Phoenix Suns scale, which we debuted, I think, 4 games ago, where we rank the game on a 1 to 10 scale. We gave out 2 10s so far, and they were both Portland games because you can't lose those games. You can't add to the list that I just read to you. You play Utah later this week, 11-37, second worst record in the NBA. That can't get added to the list. You can't add that game to a growing list that has Charlotte on it, Brooklyn, 2 against Portland, Detroit, all these teams that I named. You can't add Utah to that list. And oh, by the way, you haven't played great against Utah this year. You haven't played great against Washington this year. Both those games you beat them, they're close. The story of the 2024-25 Phoenix Suns is simple. They can't win the winnable. They make it difficult on themselves. They make it more challenging than it has to be. So for every game like last night that you lose, for every game like Saturday that you lose, you got to find one against Oklahoma City. You have to find one against Houston and Denver and Memphis. You have to find one. With the hardest schedule remaining in the NBA, you have to find one. You have to find a game. Not only do you have to beat all the teams like Utah that come up on your schedule, but you also then need to pick up a game somewhere. With 33 games to go, here are the easiest opponents remaining for the Phoenix Suns. 2 against the Spurs. Let's keep tally, everybody. 2 against the Spurs. 2 against the Bulls, that makes 4. 2 against the Raptors is 6. 2 against the Pelicans is now 8. And 1 against the Jazz is now 9. You have to win all 9 of those games. Those are the easiest opponents, according to Tankathon, for the Phoenix Suns. You have to win all 9 of those games. All 9 of those games have to be wins. And then you have to make up these 2 Portland losses by finding one against somebody else. Now, it doesn't have to be against Cleveland or Oklahoma City or Boston or Memphis, New York or Houston. Those are the top tier teams that you play. Those are your toughest opponents left. Maybe you get one against the Lakers or the Nuggets or the Clippers or the Timberwolves or the Mavericks, teams directly in front of you in the standings. Maybe you can find one against those teams. And you do. You have to find them. You can't just lose those games and go, oh, those teams are, they're around the same as us. Sometimes we'll win, sometimes we'll lose. No, you have to find those wins. You have to make up for the 2 that you just lost to Portland. You have to find a way to make up for the 8 that I've pointed out when you lost to Brooklyn at home, when you lost to Detroit at home, when you just lost 2 to Portland, when you lost to Charlotte in Charlotte on the second night of a back-to-back that was inexcusable. You have to make up for those games if you want to still be serious in the Western Conference, because right now you're holding on. You are the 10 seed in the Western Conference right now. Barely. You have the same record as Golden State. Look at the way Golden State is conducting business this week. They still think they have a chance. They are way more desperate than the Phoenix Suns are right now. And maybe that is the worm starting to turn here, where Phoenix is realizing, this front office is realizing, this isn't happening. But Golden State is desperately trying to acquire an all-star, desperately trying to get somebody in the building to pair with Curry, with Green, to give it one more run. Do you sense the same desperation right now around the Phoenix Suns? It's one guy, it's Jimmy Butler, and let's be honest, that's gotten real quiet over the last week. We told you yesterday, but I'll repeat it again because sometimes people aren't here the whole time. So I want you to understand what's coming up next week for the Phoenix Suns. Not only do they have Oklahoma City and Denver this week, Utah sandwiched in the middle there, but next week they play 5 games. Memphis, Houston, San Antonio, Chicago, Toronto. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, we've already told you, Chicago and Toronto, even though those games are on the road, that's part of that group of 9 that you have to have. Are you watching a team right now that you think is going to go into, that's going to host Memphis on Tuesday and beat Memphis? Does it look like a team that's going to go into Houston and beat Houston? Now, maybe you'll be able to beat San Antonio. I would have said a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week, I would have said you have a chance, but they just added De'Aaron Fox. What does that team look like? That's at least a bigger challenge than it was on Friday's show. That's what you have next week. We said you had to go 2-2 this week. You've got 3 games left. You have to find 2 wins. You got to beat Utah on Friday, and you got to steal one. Either tomorrow night in Oklahoma City or on Saturday at home against Denver. And so ask yourself this. as we continue to lay this out day in and day out. It's just getting to a place where the math ain't mathin'. You'll hear me say that a lot. I say it all the time. The math ain't mathin'. When it doesn't add up, when I can't get there with what I've seen, what the eyeball test tells me and what the math tells me, it's just not happening. I know it. You know it. I know you're listening in the car, on the app, on the YouTube stream. You know how this season is going to end for the Phoenix Suns. You know it. You have already accepted that this season is not ending the way it was supposed to end. They are not competing for a championship. So you know it. I know it. Here is the most important question. Does the Suns front office know it? Does James Jones know it? Does Matt Ishbia know it? Doesn't matter what you and I think. I can talk until I'm blue in the face. I can take your phone calls all day long on this. I can read the YouTube comments on this all day long. It truthfully doesn't matter what you and I think. What matters at this point, 49 hours away from the trade deadline, is what James Jones and Matt Ishbia think. Do they see that the math ain't mathin'? Does their eyeball test show them the same thing that our eyeball test is showing us?